This is the second edition of the Competitive Yu-Gi-Oh blog, and my blog today is going to be about the skills that good players use and how you can improve your skills and get better at Yu-Gi-Oh. So this blog is mainly directed towards sort of worse players, but I think a lot of good players can benefit from hearing it as well. And this is really just for anyone who wants to improve their game, and everyone should want to do that. So, I'm going to start off by saying I think a lot of worse players like somewhere where major places where they go wrong is they just don't like think about their plays enough. Because really, if you think about Yu-Gi-Oh enough, I mean, you can figure out the best play with enough time. So, like I see a lot of worse players sort of extending their board a lot. They'll summon a lot of monsters and attack for a bunch of damage, but then next turn maybe I'll summon a Dark Arm Dragon or something and wipe their board, and now they're left with nothing and they can't counter me. So it's really not a good idea to extend your board at all unless you have a lot of protection or it's going to be game. So yeah, you really want to be playing very conservatively and sort of maneuvering yourself into a better position so that eventually then you can beat them down or ODK them or do whatever. So you want to play an advantage-based game, not like swinging for a lot of damage or like trading off with battle. So that's just not how you want to be playing. And so yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh is a very logical game. Like the advantage system, even though some people might disagree with it, you can sort of put it in different contexts and it makes more sense. Like you might not want to smash and ground a Dekoichi because that some people would say it's a -1, but the real reason, or the way I think about it, is that you don't want to smash and ground the Dekoichi because you'd rather save your smash and ground for a different monster. Because Dekoichi you can just kill through battle, but you might want to save your smash and ground for a monster with higher attack that you can't kill. So I think it makes a lot more sense if you think about your plays that way. And yeah, I just really encourage all players to like. I know for a while when I was bad, like I would just sort of make plays and not think about them, and just like it was what I learned from watching like feature matches maybe, but it still wasn't really the right play. Like the most obvious play is really never the right play, or I wouldn't say never, but it's not the right play a lot of the time. So I really encourage you to think about your plays and why you're making them, and not just say, well, do this, just play for no reason. So that's some advice. And so a skill that the top players use is reads. And that basically means that like they'll try and figure out your face down cards or your cards in hand, and they won't see them, but they'll sort of use their knowledge to figure out what you have set or in your hand. So a pretty easy example is against like Lightsworn or something. If they go set a monster, set a magic and trap turn 1, I'm probably going to think they have Crush card, because Lightsworn does not run that many cards that they want to set. So they probably either set a Raikou or a Necrogardener, and then their back row, they don't run that many traps, so it could be like Threatening Roar or Crush card or Beckoning Light, but probably not Beckoning Light because it's still pretty early in the game. So you see how I just did that? That's sort of process of elimination. That's what you want to be doing while you're in game. You just want to be constantly thinking about what they have in hand and what they have set. So in this situation, like if I think they have a Crush card, it's important that you don't sort of put too much faith into your reads, because you don't want to be sort of making all or nothing plays and like say if he doesn't have Crush card I might be screwed over. So you want to be careful, but if you do think you should be confident in your reads too. But I found that when I was sort of learning how to read my opponents, I became like very confident, and I would just sort of like call out their face downs without prior knowledge. And you really shouldn't be doing that, because I don't know, you should put a lot of thought into your reads and not just sort of be able to call out whatever they have. Like you're really going to be wrong if you try and do that. So yeah, just play carefully when you try to read their cards. And I also hear a lot of bad players say that like I knew you had that and like I shouldn't have done that or whatever. And like I don't know, I sort of think that's sort of a bullshit excuse, because like if you really knew I had that, you probably shouldn't have made that play. And so like good players, I mean, they're going to be confident in their reads, and if they think you have Mirror Force set, they're not going to attack with a lot of monsters. So you should really just be playing like that and be confident in your reads, but not like overly confident to the point where you might make mistakes or you might misread a card and it could really hurt you. And another concept that good players use is the concept of outs, and that's like if you have a big board, or say you have a Judgment Dragon and you're at 2,000 life points, that their out might be brain control, because they can take your Judgment Dragon and wipe the board and attack you for game. So outs is really the cards they could have that stop whatever you have on the board. So if you're attacking with a bunch of monsters, their out might be Mirror Force or Torrential Tribute or something. So outs is sort of a hard thing to learn, or hard to apply, because at the beginning of the game, I mean, they have 6 cards in hand, and then maybe they're drawing, so that's like 7 cards to work with, and it's sort of hard to figure out like all the different possible combinations that they could have as outs. Like, I don't think many people in the world can do that. It's a lot of math and just pretty hard to figure out. But later in the game, once maybe you get down to 1 or 2 cards, or like in the Judgment Dragon situation, if you're looking at what they can top deck, then it's really important to know what their outs are. So you want to be... Another skill top players use is constantly looking at your opponent's grave. And so you want to figure out what they have left in their deck and what they've already used, so you can sort of play around what they have left and not be afraid of what they've already used. So, like, if you're playing, ideally you want them to have no outs. Like, you want to get them into a situation where they have no counters to your moves. So that's sort of the ideal goal when you're playing, if you want to keep that in mind. Like, you want to get them into a situation where they can just do nothing. So outs, the concept of outs is sort of hard, but it really determines how you play in a lot of ways. And if you're not considering their outs, then you're probably not going to be playing very well, because you might be swinging into their face downs, and it might be Mirror Force or something like that, and you can lose a lot of advantage that way, and then it just puts them at a greater advantage. So another concept, or another idea, is bluffing, and I think that a lot of people think they know how to bluff, but a lot of times it ends up being not very effective, and really, yeah, not what they're trying to do at all. So, like, I know last format, the Teledad format, I wasn't very good at it, and I would sort of watch these feature matches where you would remove your Malicious and set a card and get them to think it's Crush card. But in reality, that doesn't accomplish that much, because what they're going to do is just swing over your Malicious, and then you're going to be, oh, well, I don't have Crush card. So, I don't know, you really only want to be making plays like that when you can really benefit from it. So you sort of have to think of the psychological effect that them thinking that you have Crush card will have. So if they think you have Crush card, what they might do is not play their Reinforce in the army, or they might set a bunch of cards to sort of so you don't gain as much knowledge off the Crush. So maybe if you have Heavy Storm in hand, then you want to bluff your Crush card, because they might set a bunch of cards, and then you can storm them for advantage. So, I don't know, a lot of these bluffs are sort of situational, and it's really important that when you're playing, you play very, like, sort of confidently, and you don't give anything away to your opponent. And I think a lot of worse players will sort of criticize the top players in Shonen Jumps or whatever, because they're like constantly shuffling their hand or checking grave or asking their opponent for cards in hand. But a lot of these strategies are just like, just sort of catch your opponent off guard and make sure you have complete knowledge of the game, and just show that you're very confident, and that works pretty well, because that can force your opponent to sort of make misplays if they think they're up against like a really, really good player. So it sort of seems sort of underhanded maybe, but it works out pretty well. And if you're playing to win, then like you should probably be taking advantage of your opponent's mistakes. So that's what I would do. You just play very confidently and sort of try to catch them off guard. And with bluffing, like, a good example is if you have a Cold Wave, but you might not have any cards that could take advantage of it, but you want to play your Cold Wave and force out their Solemn. Like, you have to play your Cold Wave, like, as soon as you draw it, and just, like, act like it's gonna be game if they don't Solemn it. So then they Solemn, and then you successfully bluff them, because they didn't actually need to Solemn the Cold Wave. Maybe you had no follow-up. So things like that, and that takes a while to learn. So it's not like you're just gonna hear this and learn it overnight. A lot of these skills just like take practice and take a lot of gameplay, and you're just gonna learn it over time. Like, it's taken me, I don't know, 5 years to get to this point, so you can probably learn it faster than that. But